music for the background. For some reason, the bit rate's a little bit low. Hopefully that gets fixed. Let's kill that. And I believe we are live. And let's throw this image back up. All right. Hey everybody, how you doing today? My name is Relyea and thank you so much for stopping by. Today we are jumping into an interview with one of the lead developers for Crowsworn. And Alex, we have him here with us. What's up, Alex?
Hey man, nothing much, just get my morning coffee, hanging out with you here, talking abilities, and yeah, that's it.
Yo, so good. Let's see, let me just double check if we are live. Are we live? I believe we are. I believe we are.
Dude, you have 138k subscribers?
I got 138k subscribers. It's been growing.
Moly.
We've been on that slow and steady. Yes.
Jeez.
Okay. We are in fact live. So let's start off. First off, Happy New Year. It's good to see you. It's been a little bit since we've had you on the channel.
Yeah, it's been a hot minute.
But it's been
Happy
good.
New Year to you as well, and everybody I guess in chat. Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, best of holidays.
Yeah. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be kind of having a discussion. We'll probably go, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes or so of just, I don't know, at least to start out, of just talking about what goes into designing an ability. I did the Kickstarter backer for Crowsworn at a high enough tier to be able to design an ability. And so we're going to be doing like the intro of what goes into that, what we can do, can't do, and this is gonna kind of be like the baseline before we actually pick which ability we will add to Crowsworn. So yeah.
So I mean, like, yeah, we briefly touched on it a little bit in our pre-stream chat, but I was kind of hoping to, as well, since you invited me for the chat, also try and, like, for lack of a better term, like kill two birds with one stone, where, you know, we kind of prime it, discuss what's going on, so you know what to expect in the process. But then, you know, anybody who's in the Kickstarter sort of community or family, or if they're designing abilities or bosses or whatever it is, would be sort of approaching it through a sort of similar kind of fashion. And you know, it's kind of like basically trying to take whatever your vision, or the, you know, your audience's vision, or whoever it is, that's however you guys are designing this whole thing, and sort of put it in the world of Crowsworn within the constraints of like what's available in the world, right? Like I said earlier, it's like, you know, if you're telling me, oh, you know, I wanted to whip out a bazooka, it's like, well, we don't have bazookas. So
I wanted the bazooka to shoot out crows. We can't do that?
You can get a crow that shoots a bazooka, but a bazooka that shoots out crows is not a part of the lore.
A crow shooting a bazooka. We need that. We need that meme immediately. Somebody get on that.
So, yeah, and that's more kind of, I guess, what we're sort of touching base on. I guess there's some things, you know, we can go over if you're interested, that is sort of like public knowledge, but we could probably like delve into questions a little bit more about it, like, you know, the Corvian abilities, certain things about it, like, you know, they have to be in that red and black sort of color scheme, because that's I don't know if I told this to you or somebody else, but like it's kind of like on parallel with you know, if you're talking, like, let's say use Hollow Knight as a reference, and it's, you know, you've either got like the soul stuff or the void stuff, so everything's either kind of like white or black. And you can't just suddenly start splashing in a different color, because it totally like breaks the lore, right?
Yeah,
so
for sure.
We've kind of got these red-black colors that are integral to, I guess, the lore and why they are that color. So
because that would
be like a, yeah.
That's specifically what we're designing, is a Corvian ability. So we're designing an ability that uses these powers, and so we have to be within the constraint of what those powers are and what they can do, right?
Right. And I mean, they're reasonably like. You know, we'll talk about, they're reasonably like flexible, in the sense that I think, apart from like the red and black and certain other constraint. I mean, I can talk about the constraints right now because it's like I don't really have to say the implication of it, but like for example, like all the Corbin abilities have to be like channeled or conjured via the main character's hands.
Okay.
So like you can't have them spawning from feet or something.
But you could have it channel from the hands and do, say, a Corvian boot kick.
I mean, if you like did some kind of like we'd figure out how to animate and whatever, but it would have to start with the hand, or a hand, one of the two hands. So that would be like a rule in terms of starting with it. But I mean, it's like if you want to somehow like we could theoretically, if it was like a kick, you could like do a quick animation where it goes the hand, like swipes it over his boot, and then does like a roundhouse kick or something, right? Like, something like that theoretically could be
interesting,
like done. But it has to, it has to start from the hands, I guess. Has to be red and black in terms of its color. The Corbin abilities themselves like don't have a shape or form, so you could theoretically shape the energy however you wanted, if you want to call it energy.
Could it,
it's
so
malleable.
With that in mind, could it potentially make like a spear or a bow and arrow, or make something in the physical world that gets used once in that way?
Yeah, you could like conjure that would be something. Like, I don't know, you could theoretically conjure like let's say you're talking about like conjure a sword that's red and black and do like a swipe with it or something. Like if that was a thing, we could do that, or a spear, or not a bazooka.
Not a bazooka.
Not a bazooka.
I bet you chat's got some pretty crazy ideas. I just want to see real quick, chat, if you've got any outlandish ideas. I just want to see what you come up with. Just real quick on the fly. Go, throw in your ideas and we'll continue on. Okay, so from the hands, red and black, and can pull and create something physical.
Yeah. Is Mongoose Radio Canadian? I see that in like big chat. I mean, technically the company is like Canadian and the bulk of the team is in Canada, but we do have people that are, at least one person that doesn't reside in Canada working on the team, so we're kind of like cross world, I guess.
Spinning crow tornado of death. So when you conjure from the hands, and then the ability can come from, could it potentially come from either off screen or above you or below you? It can kind of come from anywhere, just about, right?
I mean, like theoretically, and then all of that kind of stuff would be like just the tuning of it. Like you could, I don't know, if you're saying like off screen, let's say you were gonna, I don't know if people play Smash, or I played like the first Smash, I haven't played since, but like how like Pikachu does the thing where that like thunderbolt comes from the sky like above and hits Pikachu, and stuff along the way gets hit. Like theoretically you could do something like that as well, as long as like conjuring, but we'd have to put it in a way that there's the balancing and fine-tuning of stuff like that, obviously, and there's little things to nitpick through, but conceptually you could put it together. And then
could you summon a sword and like throw it? Yeah, we talked about a sword being a potential thing. Let's see, I always like blood magic. And then is there the potential for a Corvian ability to do some sort of buff, whether it's heal or provide some sort of defense, or is that not what that magic is able to do?
Well, so the thing is, like, we'd have to think about how to structure that, because the one thing, and I'll just talk, I guess we're now talking about the nitty-gritties of design a bit. Like, Crowsworn's sort of structured in the like very discretized pip system, if you will, which pip means like just a unit for like health and stuff like that. So it's like, again, games like Hollow Knight are structured that way, where it's like, if something deals 1 damage, that deals 1 damage. If it deals 2 damage, all of a sudden it's a big deal. Whereas
it's 100% increase. Yeah, it's massive.
It's 100% increase, and it's very obvious to the player what that means. There's like an immediate impact of it, whereas something like when you're playing Dark Souls, it's just like, oh, this boss kind of deals more damage, and it's this bar that's very kind of like ambiguous, and you don't really know or care how close you are to death. You just kind of know at a certain point you're like low. You know what I mean? There isn't this calculated process in a person's head. Like if you're playing in Hollow Knight and you have like 3 masks, you're kind of like, okay, like I'm safe for most abilities because I don't know if anything like deals 3 masks of damage in the game. Some things do 2, but then all of a sudden 2 is like the death threshold. Whereas in Dark Souls, you don't really have that same appreciation because with these bar games, it's a lot more amorphous. So by extent, like also in Dark Souls, you can do things like defense increases, which is like, oh, I mitigate 10% of my damage or something, but like 10% of 120 is something. You can't really do 10% of 2 masks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you can't like increase defense like that. Same thing goes with attack. It's very like unit discretized, so you can't really like increase damage that way. But what you could do in theory if we have a system like that is, let's say you had an ability that like gave you 3 of those kind of like overcharged health things that are the like blue stuff in Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
That would be like a theoretical way to increase defense, quote unquote.
Yeah, even if it was only temporary or whatever, right?
Right.
Interesting.
Or something that absorbs X number of points of damage. So like, yeah, that we could come up with that. It would just be again like a fine-tuned like balancing mode. So that's possible. So yeah.
Somebody asked that these guys are hiring animators though. I don't know, probably not hiring. You guys probably already done all your hiring, right?
Well, it was more like, yeah, we kind of it was. I mean, it's just like through, again with like the volume of work, like we it wasn't even like intended to be honest. It was just kind of like it's like I saw this one guy who was doing David Lubb. He like his online is Lubb. His name's David. He submitted for the art contest, and I was like, oh cool, this guy's doing these paper mache things. And I just like looked through his Twitter feed, and I'm like, oh, this guy does like animations that look kind of, you know, he does Hollow Knight fan art stuff, and I'm like, this looks like quality. So I was like, hey man, do you want to try out? If you can do this, then you know it'll speed up the process for us and we can get this done. And he was interested, and we tried him out, and it's like, yeah, so but it's not like we don't have like a job posting for animators, if that's what the question is.
Yeah, I think that's what the question was, because if the question is, are they going to have animators? Yes, they are going to be able to animate and design any of these abilities. They've got a lot of really great people on the team for sure. Grog was asking if they can make passive abilities like Carefree Melody, or does it have to be a dynamic lock to a button? That's a good question.
So the Corbin abilities, all of them use like the resource. So we have 2 resources technically. There's the bullets, and then there's the malice meter, which is tied to the Corvian abilities, and it works. Yeah, it works similar to like I guess Soul and Hollow Knight, but with a few like sort of differences to it, I guess. And it's not tied to your healing. That's the other thing. Like healing in Crowsworn is strictly based on like a flask system, if you will, that is separate from.
Oh, really? It's completely separate from the malice. I mean, it makes sense that it's a physical flask, but
well, that was like I don't know. This is like a conscientious decision that sort of was like my opinion that we came up with, and it's something that was. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just like it's something that I always gimped me when I was playing. So like right from the days of Super Metroid, like if you have a super missile or a missile, like I was emotionally attached to them.
Yeah.
Because I knew they were used to open doors and other things, so I would never use them in combat. Like I was always saving full missiles, and I know like all the other players who are like quick, they're using them. And
I did the same.
I just have like, yeah, and then I had the same thing with like Hollow Knight in the beginning, where it's like if I'm playing, I would never like use abilities because I'm like that's my health, man, like that's my heal, like I can't use that, that's for healing. And it was just like there was this emotional attachment that I really wanted to get rid of, I guess. So yeah, that was the thing.
Interesting. This will get us a little bit off topic, but are you able to say how a player will come about getting a flask, or if that's getting too off topic, that's fine?
So, I mean, yeah, I guess I can say it because it's going to be sort of touched on based on in another thing is, so like you'll find, basically you can craft flasks. I guess I'll say that you can craft them.
Okay.
And you craft more of them by finding items to, increase the amount, I guess. It's similar to something like in Dark Souls where you pick up an Estus flask in the world, but like in this thing you don't just get one. You have to get resources
materials,
to craft them, and you can find them in the world, and they are finite in nature too. It's not like, you know, you can get an infinite number of flasks. There's a finite per.
They get heavy
save.
eventually, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just like, yeah, there's the resources run out, I guess. So, yeah.
Let's see. So when I think of designing an ability, I feel like there's only so many different things you could do potentially, whether it's either defensive, offensive, or some sort of utility or movement. Which I think that was one of the things we actually didn't cover, is that the Corvian ability is something that cannot be movement based. Like it can't have any sort of knockback, give you sort of boost to your jump or anything like that, correct?
So it can, it's not that, it's like we just have to be like, it's not obvious how to describe that rule, because the idea is you can make it move. It just has to be in a way that, like, you know, we'd be mindful as designers to try and not obviously make it something that breaks the gated progression of a metroidvania, right? Like we can't suddenly have one where, oh, you get it and all of a sudden allows you to dash across the screen midair, because that all of a sudden has implications on how you would traverse levels, and it's very obvious that it would break it. But if you you know, like if you look at the pros, and again, I'm just keep using reference. I'm using Hollow Knight as a reference because I assume that's like what most of your viewers know.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I feel like I end up using Hollow Knight as a reference against like every game. Like it could be like Halo Infinite, and I'd be like, yeah, well, Hollow Knight this.
Well, I mean, it's a good reference. A lot of people know about it. It's a, you know, it's a very well done and designed game with a lot of intentional decisions behind. I think at least it comes off that it has a lot of intentional decisions. But like, you know, when you see, I don't know, like Fireborn and those guys doing like skips where they're jumping and shooting like the
fireball, vengeful
the fireball
spirit
thing at
type
it,
thing,
and it's like they're getting those like frames where they're pushing back, and this is like using skips. Like I suspect that, like, you know, nobody intended to have it used that way, and it was just like something that, like, oh wow, these guys are really good, right?
Yeah.
So you might have your ability lead to something like that coincidentally, but you know, if we see it from a mile away, we're not gonna let it happen, right? It's just like maybe later somebody like Fireborn figures out how to break it, and then it's like, okay, well, that's yeah, I guess you know what I mean. It's just like designed
no,
so
it makes sense.
like,
yeah, you're trying to,
yeah.
you don't want to the quote unquote rule. Maybe it's something like we don't want it to break the game.
Right, and not obviously break it. Like, you know, it's not like, oh, okay, that's like, there are abilities like double jump that's clearly designed to increase traversal, and you know that it's immediately every person that gets it, it's like, oh, that opens up new paths for me. But like, these things shouldn't, like, I don't think anybody picks up the soul bullet thing in Hollow Knight and it's like, oh, like, there you go, I can reverse jump, right? Like, so
that makes sense. Let's see, I'm trying to think what else. So even with like offense, there's only so many different things you can do. Either you've got some sort of projectile, some sort of melee, potentially some sort of area of effect or crowd control.
right.
Or I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I mean, it's something that comes from the ground, something that comes from the top. Some sort of like, it looks like you've already got something that I wouldn't call it a hook shot, but a Corvian ability that goes across the ground and brings enemies to you. So I think that's one thing that you'll probably have to share with us. Things that are already in the game, so we're not like, yeah, let's get a hand that goes across the ground and brings people to you, and you're like, done.
No, yeah, it's actually funny because somebody, you sort of have to, I mean, just assume that we're not filthy liars. Is like, there was another backer that asked, it's like, you know, if you've designed, like, if my idea is something that you guys already have in the game, you'll tell me, right? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, okay, because, you know, it's like, and they were like, oh yeah, because you know, I think they were actually okay with it, like us telling them and them not redesigning. But I was like, you know, if it is, like, we'll tell you and you can come up with a new idea, unless you really don't want to come up with a new idea, in which case it's kind of like,
We'll just slap your name
okay,
on it.
I guess like you could say that was the one you wanted. I don't know, but yeah.
Fair enough. How many? I can't remember. I think it was 5. But how many Corvian backer designers were there?
Yeah, I think it was 5. I'll actually look it up as well, because I know we like the intent. We had intentional numbers, and then during the whole Kickstarter, it kind of like, you know, the whole thing sort of like blew up more than we expected. So people like started DMing a lot, and we were really trying to wiggle around how much we could get. Yeah, there's 5. How much we could sort of like do without blowing our bandwidth completely.
Yeah.
Because I think even now, I'm just like, recently I got like a guy who's kind of like, hey, can I upgrade from mini boss to boss? And I'm just like, I don't know how people have like $3,000 to throw at stuff, but
Inflation.
I guess I don't know, man. Like I don't know. But so, and I'm just like, I don't think as it stands we have the bandwidth to comfortably like accept that, because it's, you know, right now the focus is to make sure that we can actually get the game done within the time allotted. So
Fair enough. People are already asking, so when does the game come out? It's so early in development. They just finished their Kickstarter, late last year.
yeah,
I threw out the guess it'll come out like end of next year at like the earliest.
I mean, I think that's a fair guess of like sort of earliest, and it's always you know, there's a bunch of these things that sort of happen throughout like development anyways, that you kind of plan for it, but things get like either bigger or smaller, or things change, and you know, like a new system might come out that, like, you know, there's a bunch of stuff you can't really predict for. And then there's obviously like when I guess you've kind of got like a bunch of third-party stuff going on, like physicals or whatever it is, that could be a delay in its own right. Like you trying to get it on a like a physical disc, and you try and put it out, and it's like, oh no, there's bugs like with the Nintendo Switch version or whatever it is, and it's like, well, that's just gonna hold up a bunch of other things, because and all these things can't be like predicted ahead of time, right? Because it's like, just because the game also runs on PC today, it might run on a Switch on today's build, like 2 months later you add some stuff and it's like, wait, that like shader doesn't play well with the Switch, so we have to like, and you're not checking every day because it doesn't make sense, because the amount of time it takes to take a build is like, it's like when you're making a build, probably that day you're doing nothing else but making a build.
When you say make a build, are you talking about compiling?
I am talking about compiling.
Nailed it! Woo!
Yeah, we're talking about compiling.
And once a game is compiled and uploaded to Steam, you can't just like download a compiled game and like edit it or something like that. That's not how it works. In case you're wondering, chat, that's totally not how it yeah, I'm learning.
So,
I am now an entry-level developer, just because I know that. Not even close. But okay, man. There's like, I'm just so excited in general for Crowsworn. Like, so hyped up.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are too. I think I've gotten the once I come before, like when I come on your shows, it's like people are like, oh, this guy doesn't sound like he's excited about his own game. It's not that. It's just like, you know, we're doing it all the time, so this is kind of like my normalized state. Yeah, we're excited too, though. But yeah, for
sure. Let's see. I'm trying to think of what else. So, somebody was asking about would it be possible for a Corbin ability to like take over an enemy and make them like attack their friends or something like that? Is that even, or is that not the nature of?
I would say like at that point I would, the amount, just like that's like one of those things that you wouldn't know as like, unless you're doing programming or developing games, but that kind of ability is like, you have to plan your game from the get-go for something like that, and it's like, to implement that would be heavier on resource consumption than like designing 3 bosses maybe at this stage, because that would mean you'd have to like redesign every enemy completely. Like, I don't even know, it would be completely blowing the whole system, because it's like, now you have to allow damage colliders that were like not assumed to be able to hit enemies and redesign the whole code for that, and then enemies AI would have to change to like now target things, and it's like, well, how do two enemies interact with one another? Is there ever situations where this breaks? It's just like it's a whole can of worms that it's like
Totally makes
that
sense.
one wouldn't be
Yeah,
be doable. I just like to give a full explanation so people aren't just like, oh, he's lazy. It's yeah, like those kind of mechanics. I think usually the game is very poorly designed around that kind of mechanic, and yeah, and that drives the force. Whereas like Crowsworn isn't really designed around that kind of stuff.
Can you say how many Corvian abilities are already designed, or at least thought up and planned to go in currently?
I can say at least how many because you can see them in the trailer.
Yes.
So I can give you that.
Yeah.
There's at least 4.
So that's like so there's that would include, I imagine, the dive. Would that be considered a Corvian ability?
Yeah.
So there's that.
Dive,
There's
slam
the
thing, yeah.
what do you call it? The hand motion thing,
Yep.
like where the hand goes across the ground and pulls an enemy in. And then
Mhm.
Is it one where it's like an area of effect, like almost like a Super Saiyan shot? Is that what that is?
It's like a beam that comes out. That one's also the one that's like all those things are subject to potentially change.
Yeah.
Some of them were definitely like them. That one's kind of in the back of my head. We're debating on whether we want to do it like the Unibeam style Super Saiyan shot or do more like launch a projectile. And there's specific. Man, this is gonna get a little bit technical, but I suspect some people might be interested. Is like one of the things to make like sort of the impact in games feel good is like I don't know what they're called. They're called like freeze frames by some people. I call them like hit stun frames or whatever.
Oh, iframes.
And it's like
have always.
well, that's not iframes. Iframes and
oh.
vulnerability frames.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
So this is like in games like when you hit an enemy or something. That moment when you hit the enemy is like there's like 2 frames or something exceptionally small, depending on what you like reason out for yourself as a designer, where that enemy and you like stop acting and your animation is completely frozen, and like the player or a viewer will register this as like a lot more impactful.
Yep.
So sort of the issue with these unibeam bullets versus like a regular bullet is if you shoot a regular bullet, you don't actually have to stop the guy launching the bullet from doing anything, and allows the game to flow more. With the unibeam thing, you actually do have to, because the unibeam's like tied to the character as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it creates this kind of like sort of like potentially awkward situation where it might not be as good as possible, or you might want to just do a bullet. So that's why we're kind of like debating on what to do with that.
It breaks the flow of action
A little bit, maybe.
if it puts in a little bit of a pause.
Yeah, it's someone's asking it hit stun kind of, and it's like hit stun. It's like a so it's like I don't know. It depends what you call it, really, because like hit stun could also just mean like you're stunning the enemy for like a knockback, so that they're more exposed. Like I'm not entirely sure what you want to refer to it as, but basically kind of like freezes the image on the screen, so the combat feels better. If you look at games like Marvel vs. Capcom or something with like the fighting games, it's very pronounced in these games, and you can sort of get away with it because in that case there's only 2 actors on the screen, which is you and the player you're fighting against, so it doesn't really matter. And it also lends itself intrinsically to making combos easier to perform, because every time you hit something it gives you that extra time to buffer your input, so it all like feeds into the proper design. Whereas with a metroidvania you can't be as gracious with it, because you know somebody else on the screen, like enemy B, might be trying to attack you while you're having these freeze frames with enemy A, and it actually gimps you in a way.
Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, like that's exactly it. Like the Good Night Nintendo is like in Hollow Knight, when you get hit, it's exceptionally pronounced. There's that one moment where you get that like cracked screen thing, so they really try to hammer home that it's an impact took place. It's stuff like that.
Yeah. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, so I think we talked about 4 abilities there, or 3 or I can't remember. But I think there's one more that's already currently in the game, but I can't remember what the last one is.
Oh, there's one that's like a short-ranged drill-like thing, and I think a lot of people seem to think that it's the guns, like I'll just spoil that. It's actually not the guns doing anything. It's literally just like a short range kind of like drill conjured thing, and it's like low damage, high rate of fire.
Oh, interesting.
Like against like minor enemies, for example, in that it would create a situation where they're stunned effectively because of how quickly it's going, but you can also kind of group them. So it's like you can pull a guy in, bring him closer with another enemy, and then you like use this thing to hit 2 enemies with 1 meter of this thing. And it's also like an ability that you kind of hold and chain for as long as you want, so it depletes the it's like a channeled ability. It just depletes the meter how long you hold it, basically.
Got it. Okay. So with man, it sounds like that. I mean, that sounds like a lot of different abilities, and you only have so many buttons on a controller. How do you? How is that gonna work with like? Will every button be a different ability, or will some of these just be kind of like combos?
So I mean, I guess that's not spoiling. It's like there's only one button that's designated to the to like the Corvian abilities, and so they're all using the same button. But then it's like depending on the conditions that you're in, holding a certain, and they're not like it's not like doing Hadouken and like Street Fighter. They have to perform some crazy thing. It's like just simple stuff like hold down or hold up and pressing the button will use different abilities that you're using, and it's also the condition that you're in. For example, so like the dive attack, you can only do it if you're in the air. Like you can't use the dive attack if you're standing on the ground. And that button combination that's used for the dive attack in the air would create a different thing when you're on the ground.
Yeah. That makes sense. Of course, there's up A, down A, left A, right A, and so on and so forth, right? So I don't know why I had like my brain melted for a second. It was just like, okay, so one is right trigger, left RT, left LT, and then okay, so you got the 4 on the top, and then what? Yeah, okay, well, I'll just act like I didn't forget that. Let's see. What about a backflip where you have some invisibility frames and you were just faster after you perform the ability? See, certain things like that, I think you could potentially break the game.
Well, you could, and also that's the other thing in terms of the process. Probably, the way we would do it is kind of with any of these things, we'll end up sending like a form that sort of starts the whole thing of like, here you go, fill in like what you want as your ability, so we can kind of like parse all that information and figure out what's going on and what's in the backer's head. And then we'll get in talks with every backer, but I guess with you it'll be sort of presumably different because you're kind of creating content out of this, so there'll be more like public discussions with the designer ability, Relyea. But it'll be a point where I'll come in and maybe just say, based on our experience, why this might not be as cool an idea as you think it is because of like timing in the game or whatever it is, and try to like guide what we think is probably like how to get the spirit of that idea, if that makes sense. So for like a dash back into speed thing, I'm just kind of like, well, if you think about the way you play these games, is like how often do you actually want to like sit there waiting to press a button to dash and capitalize? Like it's just kind of, it's not that fun that often, right? Like the most fun abilities that when people play these types of games are the kind of like the simple ones, like just shooting a bullet forward when you're in the middle of the air, shooting your like I don't know what the like upwards shriek thing and Hollow Knight stuff like that. It's just like quick, explosive, get lots of utility out of them abilities, right? The other stuff's kind of it's cool, but people might not end up using it at all.
Yeah. Let's see. Good night, Nintendo. There's lots of great questions. Is there a type of ability that you prefer to stay away from? Integrating, for example, something that would potentially require reworking a lot of the game. I guess an example would be the one that we talked about earlier about like taking control over enemies.
Right.
Is there anything else
Like,
off the top of your head that sounds like this might be cool, but it'd be game breaking, or would
off
be
the
too
top
hard?
of my head, like, well, let's say you do it like in some of the Castlevania games, and it's like you flip upside down and you're walking on ceilings instead of the floor. Like, that would be like a no-no.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It's just like I can think of a lot of no-nos, but how ridiculous they are, I don't know. Increasing, like, I don't know, doing something that increases your movement speed would also be like a simple no-no, because that means, like, what is that implication on the distance of your jumps? You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I feel like anything like utility based, I was just planning on just staying away from that entirely as much as possible, and then just trying to figure out, okay, is it going to be defensive or is it going to be some sort of attack, and then what kind of potential things could we even do with the attacks? Like, like there's so many different things that are potential that would be really cool, like whether it spikes on the ground or the Hadouken thing is already in there, but really cool, or a sword that comes out. Like, there's so many possibilities. It's gonna be really hard to pick one.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just, it's trying to be kind of you know, creative, and it would be cool if you know, people thought more. I didn't think too much about defensive abilities, to be honest. That was kind of like an interesting thought when somebody's like, oh yeah, that would be cool if you could give yourself, like, conjure 2, you know, shields or something. I'm like, yeah, that sounds like somebody would use it too, right? It's like, cool.
Yeah, you're about to tank some damage.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, there's definitely options for. There has to be a parry system, right? There has to be a parry system. Parry system. No, there's. I mean, I don't even know if I can answer that. Like, is there anything lore related he can share? No.
Yeah, it's so early.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you know, we just can't. I can't spoil too much with the lore stuff.
Or maybe a shield. Yeah, I mean, that's potential for defensive, whether it gives you some health or puts a physical barrier in front of you for that can take a damage or two.
Yeah, there's a lot of Naruto guys in here. It's kind of funny. You're probably like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so yeah, some of these questions I'm like, 8 Trigame's rotation technique. I don't know what that is.
It's I mean, I don't know if I should be embarrassed that I know this or not, but it's like, there's this character in Naruto, I think it's Neji, or like, I don't even know, there's a clan that uses this stuff or something, but yeah. So it's pretty, like, over the top funny, but like, those kind of abilities are great for anime, but just like have zero real application in like a game, I guess. There you go, that's the one. The Hyuga clan, that's the one.
Lifesteal. That would be
Lifesteal.
interesting.
Yeah, Lifesteal's a tricky one. It's tricky because of like how implicitly overpowered it is, especially in like again, when we come back to the pip system game versus like Dark Souls, right? Like, let's say if you're playing Dark Souls with a large bar and a boss hits you for 50% of your bar, you could theoretically heal like 1% every hit, and that's kind of doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, what would our alternative be? It's like every time you hit something, you get 1 full bar back, like 1 pip, 1 unit, and that's like, it sounds insane, right?
It's a lot, yeah.
Yeah. So it's very difficult. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's see. Good afternoon. Just kind of trying to look through chat. Let's see. Why was a Corvian ability chosen over other abilities to be offered for backers? Influence. Let's see. Possibly get the guns from being swapped for bazookas. I don't think I fully understand the question, because I mean, there's a lot of different things that were offered for backers. I mean, some people got it paid for NPCs, some people paid for mini bosses or full bosses in the game. Yeah, there was a lot of different things.
Well, yeah, and the reason we kind of went with Corbin Abilities versus like something else, if that was, I don't even know if that was a serious question. I think it was a joke, but the thing is, like, the Corbin Abilities are designed to consume the meter, which means by virtue of the fact that they consume a resource, they very rarely can be used for like traversal platforming, because you don't really want to create a situation where the player can't get somewhere because they're lacking this resource, and then shoving in like enemies just for them to regenerate the resource feels a little bit roundabout. It's not like as fluid or like a straightforward design. So that's why we kind of offered those, because they aren't inherently designed for any of the gatekeeping stuff. Because if they were, then all of a sudden you're not just designing an ability, you'd be designing level design too, and world building, and that's like, you know, it's outside the scope. Yeah.
Let's see. What about making an ability like, it says shape of unnecessary, but I think it means shape of oon. So in Hollow Knight, there's one charm where if you go to heal, you actually turn into like a little, like almost like a worm or something, and it makes it so your hitbox is smaller and you can move around while you're healing instead of being just in one spot.
Okay. That's cool.
So the idea of an ability that either makes you smaller or bigger or changes your size, essentially.
You know, we could play around with that. Again, that's the only thing there that I would sort of hesitate with is it would have to, like my first concern when I hear something like that is like make sure that it fits in with the vibe of like the main character. So, you know, like him turning into like a little worm, for example, would completely be out of character with sort of the way the main character has been like presented in the game, and it's you know, like I mean, the way the trailers and everything are all like put together, and the character of the Crow guy is very, like, I'm just gonna call him Crow guy, that's not the official name, so don't quote me, but like it just comes off more like the game's almost like a power trip, right? Like the guy doesn't really come off like he's vulnerable per se, although you are very vulnerable because it's like a challenging game at times. It's not intended to look that way. Like it's not supposed to look like a struggle for the main character, right? He's got guns, he throws sights,
because he makes it look so cool,
right? That's the thing. That's the design, right? It's got to look over the top hat, you might say.
Over the top hat. He does look really cool, not gonna lie. Let's see, what about poisonous bombs? So essentially some sort of like tick damage.
Like that could be theoretically done if it's like an AoE poison that sits there. I don't know about introducing like a buff that persists, because I mean, it would just have like too many implications on like, again, design stuff. It's like, well, yeah, so like sustained AoE like tick damage, if they stay within that like poison field, would be something that's definitely like a type of thing that could be done. How would you split into a bunch of crows and turn intangible for a fraction of a second? I mean, yeah, it's a start of an idea, and then I guess like after, like, is it to just get invulnerability? Is it to deal damage? Is it, you know? There's different options to explore for sure. Maybe a curse mark that causes the enemy to deal less or take more damage when attacking. Yeah, I mean, theoretically, again, and that's just like balancing, because it's like, what does that mean for bosses? Like, does that, you know? I mean, like, again, all these things at face value, it's hard to make these decisions so quickly. When somebody asks a question, I'd probably sit there for like 2 minutes thinking like, what would the implications of that be, and can we go with it?
Yeah. Man, especially bosses. If their attack deals 1 damage, but you just cursed them so they deal less damage, they now do 0 damage for how long?
Right.
Yeah.
Or and is it like it only reduces the 2 damage abilities to 1 damage? In that case, it's like, how good is this ability really? You know, there's stuff like that. It's just like, you know, and at that point I'd be like, well, if that's what you really want, maybe we can do it if it doesn't break the game, but I would advise against it, because I don't think a lot of people would love that ability too much. You know, we're trying to also give advice to make it as cool so that people enjoy it. And
Yeah, that's one thing I'm excited for is just the flow of the game, because already it looks very fluid with the attacking and just how cool it looks. So whatever ability it is, I think it would be good to make it something that flows with kind of what we already see.
Right.
And something that's not gonna like plant you to the ground or make you want to stay in one place for too long. Like a sword swing sounds awesome. I'm leaning less towards wanting to do an AoE on the ground, because now you have to stick to that area.
Well, you could also just leave it residual, right? Like kind of like leave a cloud of something and walk away. That's, you know, if you really wanted, that could be it. You could have things where I'm just throwing ideas here out here. You could have a thing where theoretically you like curse the enemies with an AoE, and then the damage doesn't come right away, but like hits them 3 seconds later or something. You know, like there's all sorts of stuff that you can sort of mingle with. And is there going to be an upgrades for your guns so you can shoot faster, deal more damage? There's upgrades. Will we eventually see Crowsworn come to PlayStation? We're hoping on it. Like not even hoping. Like we are doing whatever the Sony equivalent is at the time when they release, unless they rebrand and PlayStation becomes like a thing they don't support anymore. And now it's like Fun Station. I don't know. Like, you know, I don't know. But the idea is, yeah, Sony consoles.
Let's see.
Whoa.
Cursed bullets.
We
kind of talked about that a little bit.
Yeah, kind of talked about it. The only thing is, you know, I talk, if we're talking about integrating the bullets with the Corvian ability, then we talk about, you know, maybe for a time frame you get a buff where your bullets deal more damage and don't consume bullets because they're like magical bullets. You know what I mean? Something like that, because otherwise you don't really want to use like both resources. I guess that would kind of, I feel like players wouldn't appreciate that. You're using both bullets and a meter, and then at that point it's like if you run out of one or the other, it's kind of doubling down, I guess.
Yeah, that's one of the things I was thinking of, is like upgrading your attacks that you already have, like whether it's your scythe or your bullets. But yeah, that makes sense. If now you're spending double your consumables, your bullet consumables, and your malice bar, that gets pretty expensive.
Yeah, I mean, there's also like there's stuff to consider, like who the ability is for when you're thinking about it. Because I'm just throwing out here, like you could theoretically make an ability where, you know, you give yourself a buff for, I don't know, 10 seconds where you deal double damage but also receive double damage. So it's kind of, you know, like I suspect guys like Fireborn or whatever eventually would be like, this is my thing. But like most people would be like, I don't really want to take double damage, right?
Exactly.
So
how does the player's damage work? Enemies have higher health numbers than the player, right? I would imagine the enemies have higher health numbers, especially the bosses and stuff, but they have health in the way like similar to Hollow Knight, in that they have ticks of damage that they can take, or like any other game out there, Ori and the Blind Forest and other stuff like that.
Yeah, they do. They're kind of calibrated to it's a bit complicated to explain, because like the one fundamental difference in I guess Crowsworn versus like Hollow Knight for combat is, in Crowsworn you do have like a 1-2-3 sort of visceral combo, if you will. So like the first two attacks are, and it's kind of like rhythmic, where the third attack is a little bit heavier and deals more damage, but it also means you have to have invested like being in this 1-2 attack position to get the third one out. And the enemy bars are mostly balanced so that however you kind of put this together, the third attack is more often than not leads as like the execution, if you will. So it usually kind of feels good, I guess. Yeah.
What about an ability where you throw your hat, crazy looking crow monster comes out and knocks away foes and damages them?
Oh man, it's funny because you know, I'll just talk about this. It's like we've since like nailed on what it was, but like back when we first got together with the Matt Griffin, we were still uncertain of like what our punishment, for lack of a better term, what for dying would be. Like, you know, if you die, like what do you have to come back and collect? Do you have like a, you know, you don't leave like a shade or whatever? But Matt's idea was that you're like, you go without your hat and the enemy that killed you is wearing your hat, and I was like,
Oh,
this
that's
just
awesome.
doesn't like it just doesn't like vibe with the flavor of the game, but it was hilarious.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we scrapped the idea, but in theory it was fun. I was just thinking about that because of the hat.
To reanimate every enemy and every attack and everything with the hat.
Yeah. Well, it would also, you'd probably just have to make it super like cheesy and just like slap a little crummy sprite. I mean, there might be like, you know, I could see like players doing like a funny mode or something where you kind of have to appreciate that it's a afterthought and can't take it seriously, but as it wouldn't be like canon part of the game, I guess.
Yeah.
Fiddlesticks Ultimate from League of Legends would be funny. New Fiddlesticks or old Fiddlesticks? Who
Oh,
knows?
good question. I don't know enough about League of Legends. I played
Don't-
League of Legends once. I logged in, played one game, and while it was like doing the countdown to start the game, I said, "Hey guys, it's my first time playing. What item should I buy?"
Oh man.
One person immediately quit, and the other two people on my team continued to curse me out the entire time. Why are you playing? What are you doing here? It's just like this is my first time playing, and
Yeah.
I don't think it was even ranked or anything like that. It wasn't like a serious game, but man, they were so angry. And it's just like,
Yeah,
dude, if you're playing with me, what's that say about you? You must be really bad if I've got no nothing. Yeah, it was silly.
I mean, yeah, League's a drug for sure. Don't do League.
Somebody asked, will there be multi endings? I think that was a stretch goal that was reached, right? To have
Yeah.
multiple endings. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Multiple endings with multiple, I guess, like levels of commitment to what you do in your run to achieve it, kind of thing. It's kind of funny. It went from abilities to general Q&A, which is fine.
I know. Yeah, it's.
Oh no, it's perfectly fine. I kind of
Okay.
expected something like this, and it'd be kind of like downtime with the.
Good stuff. I'm trying to think if there's anything else like ability related. So in case you guys are wondering, like what are the next steps? Like right this minute, I'm not picking which ability that we're adding to the game. It'll probably be another live stream later on down the road where we come together and we put together all of our ideas of what it could be. Attack, defense, all the crazy ideas that you guys have. We'll just put it into a giant like Excel list, and we'll do a bunch of like votes, and we'll figure it out. We'll work through it, right? And before that happens, Alex was saying that I'm gonna end up having to sign an NDA and get some more like lore background and information, so in that way I've got a better idea of what can and can't be in the game or whatever, right? Is that kind of what we were talking about earlier?
Yeah, I think you'll get some privy information to some of the background that'll kind of like hopefully like, I get it. Like I get what kind of abilities they are and why they work that way, and it'll make more sense to you, and you'll kind of also know what you can and can't sort of do, right? Like you know what I mean? It's just gonna like you'll know why the character has these abilities, how they work, what everything is behind it, and you'll just kind of like, I don't know how to explain it. Like imagine I told you like there's a real person that exists like this and they have this, and you'll kind of like could imagine what they could or could not do.
Raj.
And that would be kind of stuff you'd get in there. Like I said, the next thing probably would be this sort of, I don't like the word form much, but that's fundamentally what it is. It's just like a piece of paper that will like explain, hey, you know, to start it off, get an idea, you know, here's some things, like explain what you would like to do with your ability, how do you see it working, maybe do a crummy sketch of explaining what it is that it is, and then you know, we'd look at it and sort of be like, okay, you know, here's red flags we could see potentially with it, or this is great, or whatever the case may be, and then go from there. And then after that, presumably after the one like form iteration, all that stuff can be sort of like fixed up, and if there is anything to fix up, and then we'll start like implementing in game, and at some point probably end up seeing the. I guess I guess you wouldn't be able to show the result before the game is out, right? So.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And then also one thing I wanted to ask you is the things that are backer only stuff on Kickstarter. Yeah, when you do the updates that are kind of the backers only, I probably shouldn't turn any of that into a video, right? Or at least not like I shouldn't go through the entire backer update and turn that into a video, right?
So, I mean,
I wouldn't do the entire thing, but I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm respectful of other people who paid to be backers.
Well, but and that's the thing, right? Like that's sort of the way, like it's we never forced anyone to sign like an NDA for the backer exclusive content updates. I personally don't have any. It's not like I don't want to ruin the experience for the backers, so I don't really go about sharing anything more than I think is reasonable without spoiling. It's just kind of it's there because to award people who believed in the project and wanted to back it. If content creators who have backed it, like yourself or somebody else, wants to make a video, I am personally not offended, and I don't think anyone on the team is. Like, we don't care. I don't know what the sentiment of the 20,000 backers is and how many of them will be upset that you're sharing information or wouldn't be, but that's like on you, right? Like that's your prerogative, if you will. So if you're asking for me, I don't care if you make a video on it.
Fair enough.
Or any other content creator. It's just I don't like, and the backers, I assume also who hear this, it's like they're not going to come back at me and be like, oh, why are like general public getting information that we paid to see? And it's like, well, I'm respecting you, so you could theoretically share it with your friends. I'm not sharing anything on there that isn't that is like so secret that we don't want it released to the world.
Fair enough. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah, just gotta figure out what is respectful and make sure. I don't know. I don't want to make anybody upset.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It's like
So.
I don't know. It's like it's tricky sometimes. Sometimes you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet, but don't break too many eggs.
Yeah, for sure. So. And then I guess I follow up with that is, do you plan all of the updates and stuff that you do through Kickstarter, or all of those planned to be backer only updates, or will some of those be public as well?
To be honest, for the most part, I can say it's probably going to be largely backer only. I can't see a moment immediately right now where it wouldn't be, just because the way I've been structuring these backer updates hasn't been like just shove it out. Like, we've been doing roughly every 3 months and feeling how long it takes to, I don't want to spam people, and I don't want to just be like, we're working hard. And
it takes time to make the progress, right?
Yeah, it takes time, and I want to, this is what we're doing over last 3 months. This is the strides we made. These are the decisions we made. This is what's going forward, and they end up being kind of substantial. And I mean, just based on the Kickstarter feedback from the backers so far, they seem to be quite happy with that. So, we're kind of like the whole time we've been doing this Kickstarter, it's been sort of assessing what is it that the community wants, and we've kind of been trying to listen and navigate our way through it. It's like it is a collaborative effort in a way. We're the ones developing the game, but it's not like the backers aren't part of the process. Like, we couldn't make the game without them.
For sure.
So,
and speaking of, anybody is asking, like, is a Kickstarter still going on or anything like that? I didn't already put it in the description, but I will put it in after the video goes live. It is available can you wishlist this on Steam already?
Yeah, you can wishlist it on Steam.
Yeah.
So it is on that. The Kickstarter is not like live anymore. And I mean, we get messages like almost daily, I would say, about people wanting to back it now, I guess. But it's just kind of, again, same thing. It's tricky because it's like, you know, we did it, and it was like for people who came in, there was certain like perks awarded to it, like the steel book and stuff like that. That some people would want now, but it's kind of, you know, it's a tough position to be in. It's like I'd love to offer that kind of stuff to everyone, but it's like, you know, we have to respect the fact that the guys who came in at the gates get something for that, right? So
yeah. Yeah, I'm just trying to think. So, how do people follow you and whatever else? I'm just thinking. So Steam wishlist is the best way to go there, and then also I'll make sure to leave a link to your guys'. It's Mongoose Rodeo. Their Twitter account is constantly posting just little updates and pictures and things like that, and it's really cool to see.
I mean, they're all kind of like intended to be somewhat like teasery. Like, they don't tell you.
Oh, they're
anything.
super teaser.
And the idea is just to tell you, like, you know, we're alive, here. Stuff's happening. Like, you know, it's, I'm not gonna tell you what, but like, we're alive.
Yeah, it'll be like all zoomed in on some like background element or a hand or something. You're like, I don't know what this is, but this is cool.
So, yeah, and that was just kind of it, because I guess it's like that's the balance of some of the Kickstarter backers as well, who wanted updates more regularly. Where that's kind of what I'm thinking. It's like daily or almost daily, just post something, be like, hey, you know, it's a picture, we're live.
Yeah.
And in 3 months you're gonna get like a full course meal, I guess.
Yeah. Somebody's asking, are physical copies exclusive to backers? I mean, obviously the Steelbook is, but I can't remember if you guys are. I don't think you guys are planning on doing a physical release as well, were you?
Well, yeah, like Fangamer will be the ones who are, I guess, our physical publisher, so they'll be the ones running the physicals on their storefront. And I don't know anything about like if they're doing anything like having copies. That's totally on them, sold at Best Buy or anything on release, and I think that's kind of like structured with like those distributors or whatever, so I don't really know. Yeah, so anyways, yeah, physicals are not like exclusive to backers. It's just the Steelbook that's exclusive.
Let's see, does this mean a difference in playable date for backers and regular buyers? No, everyone will be able to play at the same time.
Except for the demo that we're going to release at some point, which is it's kind of it's a bit of a tricky beast with that one, because it's like we technically have enough substance to make like a demo, I guess, to like launch one, but the issue is that we want to structure it in a way that doesn't just spoil what's in the game, so it's more like a flavor of the game as opposed to the game. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because we expect people to want to stream it or something as well, and that's perfectly fine. I don't really want to like do a mass embargo.
Heck yeah, I plan on streaming that. Shoot, I'm gonna be all over that. Can't wait. Can't wait.
I know you can't answer every question, but just to ask again, because I'm really interested. Are summons viable? Something you summon with Corey Magic that deals some damage for a short time? Yeah, I mean, summons, in fact, like if you, I don't know, if you're to summon like a familiar or something that follows you and like shoots like bullets or something, would completely be viable, because the familiar wouldn't, like, there's no way it breaks like traversal, right? It's just a thing that shoots stuff. So that's completely viable, like summons are. Like Grim Child. What's Grim Child?
It's a little thing that can be summoned in Hollow Knight that follows you around and shoots little bit of damage, but it can't be attacked or anything like that.
Right. Okay, I understand now. Yeah, I think I've seen that. It's like it's from I'll be honest, guys. I didn't make it that far in Hollow Knight. Like I only beat the Hollow Knight, like the regular Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
I didn't do Radiance or any of that stuff. I was like, I just don't have time. So, yeah. Feathers, knives that are wide pattern downwards, maybe an area ability that throws forward a couple feathers. Yeah, that's possible.
Can we pet a dog? Ooh.
Is this game inspired by? Yeah, absolutely. It's like, Yeah, there's I mean, I don't know. I can't answer that question. Like, obviously, Crowsworn's got more Hollow Knight influence than a lot of games, but I think it'd be. I honestly think we're in a future now where it's like, speaking of Metroidvanias, I think it'd be naive to not look at Hollow Knight for reference of inspiration about like what makes a good Metroidvania. I think they did a lot of stuff like exceptionally right, and I don't think they like again, I don't think the game is particularly um like, it's not like Papers, Please or something. It's not like a particularly innovative thing. It's just like it's exceptionally well structured and put together. For they took all the best of stuff and kind of like did a great mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's tons of elements of things that are in Hollow Knight that have been in other games. Yeah. Let's see.
But
a screech that would stun enemies for a bit. But you have to stand still to do it, though.
I mean, again, so we're talking about that. Like, I think you made reference to that. It's like, yeah, it's cool. But do you want to like put a thing where you're stuck in a position, and do you think players will enjoy that, right? And if you think so, we can put it in. But there's a chance that nobody will want to use a stability. And the stun is a little bit awkward. I don't know what that means, because it's like stun would include a new state that we don't necessarily have.
Yeah.
Like
And can you
coded, it's
stun
all
a
like
boss?
knockback stuff.
And would you be able to stun a boss? Like, what would that even entail?
Yeah, definitely not stunning bosses. There's
Let's see. Brow is saying, I'm not familiar with this game, but I'm interested because it's a Metroidvania. And as a Plague Doctor, I love designing myself, so maybe a quick summary.
I don't know much of the game, but I wish I loved designing myself. So maybe a quick summary. A summary of what? The game?
Of what is Crowsworn?
I mean, if I had to put in a nutshell, it's like Crowsworn is it's like environment inspired by Victorian kind of gothic, with occasionally bending the rules of that, like breaking out of it. So it's like Bloodborne-ish, I guess, in a vein, but it does have moments where it breaks away from that, I would say. And then with like a combat thematic flair of Devil May Cry in an art style and I guess world design sensibility from Hollow Knight. Like that's kind of how I would describe it, I guess. That's as best as I could. I don't really know how else. It's like you're probably, yeah, if you're looking at the combat, you might see kind of like, what you'd expect from a melee Metroidvania, but you'll see the Devil May Cry influence if you're into that kind of thing. In terms of setting, aesthetic, mood, you'll probably see like the Bloodborne influence, and in terms of like the engine rendering and art style, I'm sure you'll see the Hollow Knight reference, and that's kind of how I would summarize it.
Jimmy's asking, were you gonna be able to vote today on stream? Unfortunately, no. Today was like kind of getting a little bit of the background of what we could and couldn't do with designing an ability. And so we're gonna do another stream later on down the road, where I'll have a little bit more information. I'll have to sign an NDA and get a little bit of lore information, and then from there we'll do a deep dive and list out all of the possibilities. I'll get a bunch of ideas from you guys. We'll do a bunch of polls, and we'll kind of figure out like what do we think would be fun to add to the game and just make it enjoyable, right? And we'll list out a lot of possibilities, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly, yeah. I don't want to scare you off, like, oh no, you can't. There's so many constraints. Like, that's really not it. I'm just kind of trying to say, yeah, have fun with it, and just sensibility in a regard, I guess, and that's it.
Yeah, for sure.
How many hours is Crowsworn? That's a tough one. With hours, it's kind of like almost like how long is a game is sort of, I guess, I don't know what you would call the phenomenon, but it's like predicting how long a game is. The longer it gets, the harder it is to actually predict the margin. So it's like, if you're saying I'm going to develop a game and it's going to take 3 months, you might develop it in 4, or you might develop it in 2, and there's like a plus or minus % margin, I would say there. And it's the same way in like how long is the game meant to be played. Like somebody who's exceptionally skilled and proficient might somehow finish it in like, I don't know, 3 hours, like a speedrunner. But I guess an average player would be, I guess we're intending like a core run would be 10 plus hours if you don't do any of the extras. You know, for like an average player, maybe. Does it kind of make sense? Like,
yeah,
I guess it's a tough question to answer, I find, at least.
and it's gonna be
40
tough
is
so
yeah.
early on too, right? Because it's still being made, and it's gonna need to be play tested and like fully built. So I don't know.
Yeah, and it's like, again, it's also like with, like I said, with Metroidvanias, it's tough, especially if you're trying to make like a more explorative world. Like, you know, if you took a left turn here instead of a right, and the right was the more optimal route, but the left took longer and it was scenic and kind of like showed you some other stuff, like you just might, by virtue of chance, spend more time playing the game. So it's what consoles will it release on? I think we've just promised that it's going to release on all of the current gen like consoles. And yeah, I mean, yeah, pricing also. Pricing. I mean, you know, Matt Griffin's publishing both, or publishing, whatever, market fronting. I don't know if he likes the word publisher, both like this and Hollow Knight, so we can't really. You know, we're looking to him for guidance on that, and I think, yeah, I think if you're in the Metroidvania field and you're pricing your game more than Hollow Knight, it's a bit of a
tough
statement,
right? Yeah. See, can I follow development somewhere? I think the best way to follow development right now is on their Twitter, is at Mongoose Rodeo. Yeah, because I don't think they're opening up their Kickstarter again for people to be able to like follow that way or anything like that.
Yeah, the Kickstarter was like the most sort of detailed update, and that's something we kind of just wanted to give to the backers, I guess, as a thing. But then otherwise, you know, we'll get like more chunky things, like if we release a trailer or something later or whatever it is, there'll be like more things, except the backers kind of get the what's the word in concerts, the backstage pass, I guess. Yeah.
See, has development started yet? Also, have you gotten any contacts with the big 3 companies?
What's the big 3 companies?
I imagine that's Nintendo, Microsoft, and Sony.
I mean, I can't really talk about the details of that. It's just, you know, well, the only thing we can say is, like, since the backers clearly have, you know, backed it and have selection from it, we will have the game available on like all 3 of those platforms, including PC.
Yeah,
that's the answer I can get to that.
Yeah, it's not like it's gonna become all of a sudden like exclusive on PlayStation.
Style of the cape, hat mask. I said earlier, sorry. Yeah, we can't really, like, that's a question that we've had come up a few times, and just due to the way the kind of like how the game is, it's all hand animated, so they're sprites.
Oh.
And there's no like real, unless you were to do shaders to like pick things out from the thing, and then it would kind of be messy and not like, it would destroy the aesthetic of it. It wasn't planned for that, so there's no real way to change the style of the cape or the mask or any of that stuff. It's just the amount required per aesthetic modification in terms of like work to draw those sprites again for it would be just like ridiculous.
Frostbite's asking, is there going to be a Discord server in the future? And I believe that there is essentially like a fan-made Discord server, but there won't ever be an official one that you guys run. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's yeah, it's just like it's so much work. It's already like, you know, even having experience with these updates and stuff, and it was something, thank God we had like Matt to advise us on, because, you know, going into it, I was like, oh, should we start a Discord server? I feel like a lot of people are doing this, and Matt was kind of like, no, don't, like, you guys don't have time for that. Like, if you do that, there's gonna be all these things you have to moderate it. Like, people will start their own. Like, it'll happen. Just don't worry about it. And it kind of did.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm sure the people like the fans know how to moderate themselves better than we do. Like half the time I'd show up or something and be like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. I've been in a cave for the last like 10 hours, and
Yeah, right.
it's like, look, I don't know what your community is like or your conduct is. So yeah. Is this? It's our first game as a studio, but like a lot of the people, there's some members in the studio that like worked with me before when I was making Unworthy, but that was like my first game when I didn't really know anything about making games.
Chris says I looked up Koros and the game popped up. It's bigger than I thought. Yeah, I mean the game raised over $1 million. It's it had quite a few backers, and yeah, I think it got a decent amount of hype during the Kickstarter, which wasn't all that long ago. So they probably did pretty well as far as search engine optimization, with so many people looking for it.
Yeah, we've been pretty ecstatic with the response, I guess, generally speaking.
Was there replayability or New Game Plus? I can't remember if that was a backer goal.
There is replayability options that we're planning. I don't want to say that it's New Game Plus, because I think that has certain expectations associated with it. Like, I'm pretty sure it's a coined Dark Souls term that means something.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to say it's New Game Plus, but there will be like a reason to replay the game per se, in a way. And I'd say, like, yeah.
Let's see. How big is the team?
How big is the so there's myself, there's other Alex, there's
other Alex.
Yeah, there's JJ who does audio. That's 3 of us for the music. There's Dalibor that does the sound effect implementation and sound effects, and works with JJ to implement stuff. Derek does the environmental stuff, and now David Love is like, when he's available to help with animations, he does certain animations that are thrown his way. And I think that's, oh god, I hope I didn't miss someone. I think that's it for the core team. Oh, and then there's R2, but R2's like really he's like, he's very limited on his availability for time, but what he does is exceptional, I would say. And there's the trailer team, right? Yeah, sorry, I didn't misread these guys. They're doing like the cinematic elements that we thankfully have in Crowsworn now, that I was excited to get in there.
Oh, I'm very excited for that. That was one of the stretch goals, was to get cinematic elements added to the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just something I kind of, I don't know. I know it's not gameplay per se, and I think there was a few comments on Kickstarter, not many, but they're like, oh, it'd be better if the money was used directly for like game stuff or whatever. I don't want cinematics, but to me it's like, it's kind of like almost saying like, do you want not so good music or do you want great music? And it's just like, I think it packages the whole thing together, and it was something that I thought was that'll improve the overall experience for everybody. Yeah, it was like, it's games are games, but they're also like artistic things, I guess.
Do you guys have time, or to play, or do you plan on playing other games as they come out that you could potentially draw inspiration from, whether it's Silk Song when that comes out, or Have a Nice Death, or whatever? Or are you guys like, I imagine some of you guys probably play games just in your free time. I don't know. Is that something that you guys still look for inspiration from other games, even as you're in the middle of development, or do you guys kind of have to throw on the blinders a little bit and like, we don't want to deviate too much? I don't know.
Well, it's kind of like interesting because like I actually have, I don't want to say names, but reasonably regularly just go out with certain friends, and I will play like games pretty late online for like an hour or two, and we'll just look at random stuff, and it's more not even like like even trading card games or something, it doesn't matter. And it's more of like it's gotten to this point where you don't play it for playing sake, but we kind of like critique it, I guess. And
Yeah.
and you go in and it's like, oh, this is cool. This was a good idea. And it's like, oh, this is what I would have done differently. And
Yeah.
it's like, interesting. Like I didn't think of that. Like maybe that was a, just like kind of trying to assess what it is that we like or don't like about it. What could have been different. Stuff like that, I guess. And there's it's more of like an in-depth discussion too. It's also like often how simple are ideas to implement. Like the gold stuff is the simple ideas that get a lot of mileage, right? Because you don't want to like look at AAA games or something and be like, oh, Assassin's Creed, that's cool, let's make Assassin's Creed. And it's like, okay, well, good luck.
Good stuff. All right. Well, if there's any other questions, leave them in the comments below. We will we're gonna wrap this up. Like I said, make sure you subscribe if you want to be a part of the next live stream where we actually start trying to pick an ability. It's not going to be next week. I do go live every Tuesday, Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. I'm not entirely sure what we're going to be streaming next. Probably some more Hollow Knight. If I'm not gonna lie, I don't know where there's a new randomizer. We'll probably jump into something like that. So I don't know. It'll probably be a couple of weeks, maybe even a month. I don't know. Before we actually start digging into this a little bit more. Maybe we'll even have once we figure out what it is. If we're gonna have to like draw something, maybe I'll draw something badly, and we can have some people in the community draw better. Whatever ability we decide to come up with or something like that. So, yeah. Alex, thank you so much for coming on and hanging out and talking with me. Everyone here, and myself included, we all really, really appreciate it.
No worries. Yeah, I'm, more than happy to be here, and thank you to you and the general community for being as supportive as you guys have. It's like it does make a world of difference to have a bunch of I don't know if it's fans or just like people in your corner and who are excited to see the game. Like it keeps people going. So
is it crazy? Like you're now like famous, right? To some extent, like you've got this whole group of people who are like cheering you on, rooting for you. Maybe it's not like the same as like being like a movie star, but it's just like you've got all these people who are like, yeah, cheering you on, rooting for you. Like,
yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's more like I see it as the for us, it's kind of like I see it as the project itself. I think I'm glad that Crowsworn is a thing that people are excited for. So for me, that's the, I guess like the way I sort of view it. It's not like a personal. Yeah, I'm excited that people are excited about the work. I guess that's the way to sort of put it. I don't really think about, nor do I really know how many people know about like me or Mongoose Roadie or whatever. And that's not really, I guess, what the.
It's not the point of it, but
yeah, exactly. That's not the excitement of it. I'm just happy that people are, I guess I'm hoping the protagonist is famous, for lack of a better name for him, and that people like that guy. So that's all I can really ask for.
Good stuff. All right, well, I'm gonna end the live stream here. Thank you guys all so much for hanging out, and I will catch you again next week. Bye, everybody.
Cool. Thanks again, Relyea, and thank you everybody else. Yeah. Cheers.